Well, what?
That's as loud as you could crack it. Thunder's just a noisy racket.
That's the sleepy sign.
Welcome to another episode of the Radical Parenting Podcast. My name is Tony Shawcross.
Hey, I'm Kara Porval.
We usually, for the Radical Parenting Podcast, read a parenting book and review that. Kara and I are both huge film fanatics, fans of filmmaking, and this week, Kara wanted us to talk about a film that she really enjoys. So I'm going to just let her take it away.
Yeah, so the film is called The Florida Project. It's on Netflix. I had been hearing about it for a while before I got around to watching it, and then I've been thinking about it ever since. I really liked it, and I mean, like maybe I'm just twisted because it's actually there's some really sad and painful parts to it. So there's probably gonna be some spoiler alerts too. So if you think you're gonna watch it, go watch it now. I highly recommend it. And one of the things I love the most about this movie, so well, let me say what it's kind of about first. It's about I would think she's probably 6 or 7, maybe. I don't know. How old did you think she was, Tony?
Yeah, probably 6 or 7.
Yeah, and the mom, it's hard to tell. I didn't think about it much the first time around, but the I just watched it again. And I mean, I don't know. She could be 19. She could be 29. I have no idea how old the mom is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the mom is, you know, truly a unique like character. I mean, she's incredibly rude and obnoxious when she wants to be, and she can be really sweet and caring with her friends also. And so but one of the things I love the most about it is it's almost from the kids' point of view. To me, it was actually a really joyful film in a lot of ways. It shows these kids on summer break, and it's, there's a lot of families living in, there's actually two hotels across the street from each other, and the kids just run like wild and free, and they're having a great time. And they probably have no idea that, like, they're poor and not everybody lives this way. Well, no, I'm sure they're old enough to know, and there's like a real joy to me there, and like how they depict the children, and how those children actors, they don't seem like they're acting at all. They really seem like genuine children doing what children do, and like saying the stuff that children say. And
Yeah, it's amazing acting
yeah.
performances, and I think probably a whole lot of it is unscripted. I think the way that this filmmaker even makes films is the same filmmaker that did Tangerine, and I think they kind of specialize in having this kind of rough outline of a script, like they know what the plot is, but like not full dialogue scripted and stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, I wondered about that because I'm like, there's no way these kids can carry off these performances if they were memorizing lines. I just was like, how was this done?
Yeah.
So the kids, are running around just wreaking havoc. They're like terrorizing the hotel property manager, and um, panhandling for ice cream. And they actually set up this abandoned condo on fire, and nobody knows it was them, and they don't get in trouble. But they get into like a lot of mischief. But still, there was something about the independence and freedom that these kids had that actually, again, maybe I'm twisted, but my takeaway at the end of the movie was like, I want to live in a hotel with a bunch of other families like that, in a way that would be without the poverty, but like to actually have a huge building where um, there's lots of kids, lots of families, people are supporting each other in hard times. And also there was some serious arguments and some, like shit that goes down.
Some dysfunction. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there's plenty of unhealthy stuff going on. By no means is this like, the healthiest childhood ever, but the play part and the like the kids having all this freedom to play with each other and have these really deep relationships, Um, and it's like the property manager kind of looks out for them and the housekeepers look out for them and the other parents look out for the other, other people's kids, and it's this community that I think so many of us are like lacking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had seen the film when it first came out, which was just a couple years ago, right? Or a little less than that, maybe. And didn't I really loved it, but I didn't really remember it. It doesn't have also like a real clear plot. It's just like a few weeks in the lives of these people. And so I just rewatched most of it, but not all of it. And I mean, I love, we've talked about, we haven't done any of their books, but we've talked about free range kids. And I love just kind of the general idea of, or free range parenting. I love the general idea of letting your kids, do their thing. And I grew up, so my parents divorced when I was 9 years old, and I lived in a neighborhood with a lot of kids my age, kids I was in at the time third grade with fourth grade, and especially after my parents divorced. I think they always gave me a lot of free range, but especially after they divorced and my dad was alone when I was at that house. Uh, I had a lot of free range, and especially one of the kids, his parents also were very they were very laid back, but also it was a requirement. His dad was a traveling salesman, and his mom was a night shift nurse. So I could sleep at his house, he could sleep at my house. Sometimes nobody knew where anybody was, but they kind of just like trusted we were safe. And sometimes we were playing in the cemetery or playing at the elementary school at 2 a.m. or something like that. Um, but it did end up for me like instilling this, I felt really safe, and I just felt like the world was mine to explore. And I think it built a lot of confidence in me and built a lot of adventure, and I just didn't have uptight, worried parents. And so it just made me a non-uptight. I mean, I don't think anyone who's ever met me has ever thought I was, an uptight, worried type person.
Yeah, we had a little bit. Yeah, I had a little bit of that when I was a kid, like especially when I was in elementary school. We lived in this really like, very kind of cocooned neighborhood that didn't, there weren't busy streets anywhere. We lived on a cul-de-sac where the kids could just run around. We would go in the backyards of different people and play games in the cul-de-sac. And, you know, um, I was pretty introverted and wanted to mostly be inside by myself, but I know, especially my sister would just, might leave for 6 hours and not come back. I kind of strive for that with my daughter, and I'm not quite sure how to get there exactly. Like we have this relationship with our neighbors that are right next door where they can run back and forth. They can go over to each other's houses anytime they want. We say if it's not a good time or something, but often they can just find each other and play, and we don't always know where they are, and they're running around. And if the whole neighborhood was that way, it would be so awesome. But I feel like there have to be other kids and parents that are kind of in it with us. Like I don't want my 5-year-old wandering around even just a few blocks away, like by herself. But if she's with a group of kids, especially mixed ages, and we walk around enough and go on bike rides that we see a lot of neighbors, and we they know her, especially my daughter's kind of famous, because she's like just the cutest little like 5-year-old that talks like she's 20. And I just I strive for that, and like it's not necessarily, it's me that's probably holding her back actually, because I don't feel safe with her just like going even 4 blocks away to knock on somebody's door and see if they can play. And I don't necessarily trust that she's gonna like come straight back here if they're not home and there's no adults around, you know? So I'm like, have to kind of get a grip on like how I want to manage all that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, now that I think about it, it would have been really neat for us to watch this movie and review uh Free Range Kids or whatever the it's Lenore Skenazy is her name. Yeah, the book's just called Free
Yeah.
Range Kids. It would have been cool to review this book along with this movie, but Kara and I haven't read the book yet. I've checked out her blog, but not her book, so we'll have to put that on the list. But I would say, in the spectrum of parents, from like the helicopter, the like full, disciplinarian helicopter parent, all the way to the it says Lenore Skenazy got awarded the America's Worst Mom. um, so from from the spectrum of like the Summerhill book
Peter
or
Gray.
Free Range Kids, yeah, Peter Gray, that side to I'd say you're still pretty far on the spectrum uh, towards free range and what I've even called prime directive parenting, which is that as much non-interference as possible. So yeah, I mean it's that balance, and I'm a part of so many moms groups on. I wish they were just parents groups, but they all end up being moms groups on Facebook, and safety is just this trump word. It's just like it trumps everything. It's somehow like when we're talking about building confidence, when we're talking about building independence, when we're talking about Montessori, when we're talking about any other philosophies, some mom says safety and everybody's just like, yeah, like yes, this is the way to go. And like I've been sharing some, I keep like outlet covers on all my outlets and stuff like that, but I shared an article that said like statistically this actually isn't a danger, this doesn't really happen.
Hmm.
And like abduction, like these moms teaching their kids, there's a scene in the movie where maybe there was some risk of some kind of possible um abduction or something happening, that Willem Dafoe's character kind of nips in the bud. And he's such a great character in this movie.
That was awesome. I love that scene. It was so great. Yeah, he scares away this like creepy pedophile looking guy who's like trying to get friendly with this group of, children that are unsupervised essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and I won't go on a sideline, but Willem Dafoe's character, the first time I saw him was in the movie Platoon. I don't know if you guys have seen Platoon, but his character is amazing in that film. That movie's amazing too. But so I've kind of always been a little bit in love with Willem Dafoe, and he had a great character in this movie, just a stellar character. Uh, but the point is, sorry, even with like child abductions, like in the whole country of the entire United States, there's less than 300 kids abducted by strangers per year. So like in the list of like all the different things that can happen to your kids, it's really, really low. We're talking like 20,000 kids die from drowning and like 300 at most, are abducted. And it's just like those stories of Elizabeth Sharp or of John Benet Ramsey or of the Lindbergh baby, any of that stuff that just like it's our brains are designed to target and think about threats, and we just as parents can't help it. And so it has so much power over us when we hear those. And we'll have a kid that we teach to fear humans. We teach to fear everybody. And so it takes a kind of unique parent to just have that equation happening just in this part of your brain, not this part of your brain, and say like, is a lifetime of fearing versus trusting people, like how is that going to play out compared with trying to keep my kid as safe as possible from something like an abduction. Anyway, so these kids were certainly not, they didn't have helicopter parents. They had free range parents and again, these aren't free range parents. Like I'm a very privileged position for my parenting. I can choose free range parenting. Lenore Skenazy could pick free range parenting from a place of like privilege. These parents are doing it because they have no choice. They don't have money for daycare. They have to work, and so they are free range parents, out of obligation. But like you said, the mom in this movie, who by the way was 24 when she filmed it, so it probably roughly is about the age
Okay.
of the character too. She was amazing. And you've talked a little bit. Part of the reason you wanted to do this is also just because of the relationship she had with her daughter. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because there's something about her relationship with her kid that I found so touching and sweet, you know? I mean, so this mom, she's like pretty hilariously disrespectful in so many ways. Like when something's not going her way, or she, will like fight with the building manager when she's late on her rent, or she'll fight with like the social worker who's like trying to help her. She'll fight with anyone, right? And she's like can get to the point where it's like, okay, you gotta like get your life together. But at the same time, in a way, I weirdly respect like her not giving a flying, F
While caring a whole lot about her daughter. Yeah.
while caring a whole lot about her daughter. And so the sweetness, I guess, is that she can be so rude to other people, and she's really sweet with her daughter as far as like they play, like almost every scene of them together is like they're playing together, and they're joking around, or there's not this rub of, there doesn't seem to be like a lot of power dynamics going on. And part of that is because she is really immature. I mean, she's almost like a kid. That's why I wondered if like, is she like 18,
Mm.
raising this kid? That wouldn't work if her daughter is 6. But, I mean, she's clearly very immature. She's like really, her life is in the shithole and she's a mess. But like, she has this connection with her kid. Their relationship is, it seems really human, like two humans relating to one another.
Really respectful in both directions. I mean, it's really respectful for a woman who, like you said, is so irreverent and so disrespectful to the rest of the world. They respect each other in the way two friends or two family members who love each other and respect each other treat each other. And it goes both directions. I mean, her daughter might, like, mouth off to her or something here and there, but underneath there's like a genuine respect that has nothing to do with manners or propriety or doing the right thing or tradition. It only has to do with her loving and respecting her daughter, and vice versa. So yeah, her daughter curses and she curses in front of her daughter, and um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I loved their relationship too, and I really do strive. I mean, even now, I talk to my son like a peer whenever possible,
Yeah.
and he's 17 months. He's not even 17 months old.
Yeah. Good. I mean, they watch out for each other, they care for each other, they help each other out. It's a sweet relationship. And my favorite part of the whole movie is at the end, when so watch the movie first before you hear what I'm going to say. I'm giving away the whole ending. Um, this mom, she's done all kinds of odd jobs. She's done all kinds of like scams, and she's hustling, trying to get by. She's been a stripper. She's been a dancer. She gets desperate for money. She starts turning tricks in her hotel room with her daughter there. Her daughter's in the bathtub in the bathroom, like nobody's allowed to go in the bathroom. She turns on loud music. Her kid is playing in the bath. And I mean, it's super creepy. It's like awful, and she um gets called out.
And there's some setup, like she resisted that as much as she could. I mean, she did this when she felt like it was literally the only option she had to not be homeless. Yeah.
Yeah, and she is pretty clever in her scams and stuff, trying to make money. And um she gets called, her friend that she's arguing with, that she actually beats up, um calls it's called Child Protective Services. They were calling it something different in Florida, and she gets her kid taken away. Um, they come and do like an evaluation or whatever, and then one day they come and say, This your child's going to go to another family while we do an investigation." And the child, when she kind of puts it together, what's happening, at first she's like, "Okay, I'll go with these nice women who talk to her like she's not a person, right? They're like so nice, but they're like, "Oh, be careful on the stairs." I find that whole scene so funny because these women are like, "We just really want you to be safe," and they have no idea what this kid has been up to, right? And what a badass she is.
What she's capable of.
Right. And they're talking to her in this sort of vague adult way that makes no, she's like, "What is going on? What do you mean I'm going to go to a temporary place?" And she finally puts it together that they're taking her away from her mom. She runs. She kicks and fights and runs. And she goes across the street to the other hotel where her friend is and gets her friend. And then they run together. I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. They run off together to Disney World because this is, Orlando or whatever. And they sneak inside. They just run inside Disney World. And then they're like in. And we don't know what happens. I mean, do the child protective officers ever find them and take her away? Do they actually like get away with it? We don't really know. Um, but I find that so admirable, actually, that
Yeah.
this 6 year old is like, "I don't want to go to another family. I want to be with my mom, and I'm not going with you." And these people, there's police officers in the parking lot with guns, and there's these like two or three adults that are all there to help her take her away. And she
Yeah.
isn't having it. So I have high hopes for my daughter that, if something skeevy ever happens to her, that she will not be polite and not play along and not, you know, do any of those things. I, yeah, I feel really emotional talking about it. Right now. I'm not too scared of abduction, but I mean, it's a fear I have. I get more worried about, you know, molestation and sexual abuse, and I mean, it's so, like, the statistics are incredible, like on
Yeah.
the frequency. I forget like the actual numbers. And it's not anybody's fault when that happens to them. And I would like for her, if that happens, I would like for her to yell and scream and kick and fight and run away.
And there's lots of ways that we can protect our kids from that. And I personally believe that there are ways we can protect our kids from that that don't instill fear in them. We can protect our kids from that in a way that isn't about fear, that is more about confidence and autonomy, and a kid that's not going to accept their autonomy and their confidence being they know how they feel, they know their feelings, and they aren't taught to suppress those feelings, and they aren't taught to not hurt someone else's feelings, and they aren't taught to be obedient because all adults know better than them or something like that. So yeah, I mean, this isn't what the topic of the film is, but you know for me, I loved hearing when my son was first born. He didn't really like getting his diapers changed. Still doesn't love it. He hated the cold wipes, and even if you got a wipe warmer, he just didn't like it. And so I would rush through those diaper changes. We've talked about this before, and um, and subconsciously, when you think about it, that is like it's almost like it would encourage dissociation for him. It would almost encourage him just like be anxious about this, rush through it, pretend it's not happening and whatever. And I think it was Janet Lansbury talking about, or maybe it was Elaine Maslich, and
Yeah, it was probably her.
yeah, I don't know who it was, but I think they were talking about like maybe a Magda Gerber story where she was witnessing a diaper change at an orphanage or something like that, and the diaper change, the woman changing the diaper was just so calm and was just with every move, just like, I'm gonna pick your right leg up, and now we're gonna wipe your bum, and these are babies that can't cooperate or not, they don't have any real role, but you're dictating everything you're doing. You're honoring their body. You're reminding them that their body is theirs, from birth, from 1 day old, and I remember the first time after the mother of my son had kind of made this shift too. I think she was also a little like nervous about it at first, but she had made the shift and she just said, just tell him what you're doing, just stay calm, and and it just shifted everything for me. And so, like, I think there are so many ways you can protect your children from that. I think them being really aware of their body sensations, and free to express themselves, never teaching them to suppress, like, this doesn't feel right in my body, and I'm allowed to say that. Every expression is like important for us to hear of theirs. I think their body autonomy, we're always in a rush and we're just pulling their arms through a sleeve, and we're whatever, or we're letting a doctor stick a thermometer in them or whatever. Every time we have those opportunities, just slow down and just say, either let them do it themselves because it's their body and they can do it, or if they're at an age or in a phase where they can't, you're at least honoring their body. You're saying, okay, I'm going to put your left arm through the jacket sleeve. I'm going to put your shoe on your right foot. And I think that stuff really subconsciously reinforces body autonomy. I also love just the idea of, just like, kids always want to be the boss of each other and you and their friends and whatever. And like, on some level, I want to instill in my son, everybody's the boss of their own body. We can play games and we can give that up to people and we can whatever, but like, daddy's the boss of daddy, and Arlo's the boss of Arlo, and Arlo's friends are the boss of their own body. And it's just like a slow, long, kind of subconscious recurring lesson. So for me, those are the ways that I want. I don't want to teach him karate. I don't want to teach him to scream in stranger danger. I want to teach him those other things. Everybody is the boss of their own body, and anytime you are feeling something in your body, it's important, and it's okay to express, and it's okay to listen to.
Yeah.
And that's not going to make him 100% safe, but making him afraid of everybody isn't either. And certainly making him obedient, like Elizabeth Sharp, the perfect, well-behaved, beautiful young Mormon girl, who spent a year in captivity or whatever. Like, being polite isn't going to make him safe either. So,
Yeah. And along this line, one of my favorite strategies is like, it's okay not to like people. It's okay to choose who you want to be around. So, because there's a big thing about, oh, like including everyone or being nice to everyone, or it's not okay to say you don't like someone. Um, we're reading, so Tony and I are reading this book right now that we're going to do an episode on soon called It's Okay Not to Share. What is it? 39 Renegade Rules.
29.
29. Oh, thank God. Okay. 29 Renegade Rules, and one of them is it's okay that children have the right to choose who they play with, that we don't need to force them to play with kids they're not interested in playing with, and that it's not good for the other kid either to have someone forced to play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that sometimes, like, this is a minor thing, but I remember being at a restaurant one time with my daughter, and the server, when the server walked away, she said, I don't like him. And I thought there was like something a little maybe off about him too. Nothing big. I didn't find him scary or anything. And my immediate, like, conditioned knee-jerk reaction was to think like, oh, don't say that. He's just doing his job. He's just a guy doing his job. Um, but I said, you know, that's okay. You know, you don't have to like everybody. Because that little instinct of like, no, I don't want to spend time with that person, or I don't want to like that person. That gets squashed a lot. We're supposed to be nice to
Mm-hmm.
everybody, like everybody, include everybody. And I think that might be one of the very best skills to not to not get into to get out of dangerous situations is like that little instinct, like to be dramatic when Bundy drives up in his van to be like, No, I'm not getting in there." Um, yeah, and so there's something almost admirable, for this kid to see her mom, she's seeing it modeled. We don't often get to see that modeled of like really telling somebody off or telling someone to like saying F you or whatever it is. And there's power in that actually, I think.
Hmm. One of the things radical honesty has taught me as an adult is not necessarily to doubt that intuition, but definitely to dig deeper into that intuition that I have with people. Um, I have had an experience I think I might have even mentioned in this podcast before, but I'll try and do a quick version of it. The very first retreat that Kara and I went to um, was in Greece. I had been studying facial expressions because of an animation class that I was teaching, this thing called the facial action coding system, which we're also going to talk about in a future episode because it really fits into some of the skills that I think we want to help our children get literate with. And there were two people that just rubbed me so wrong, and all I thought was the normal thing, like I just get a bad vibe from these people, and then one night I was sleeping in a yurt with this guy Marvin, uh, from Germany, radical honesty trainer. The yurt blew away. Brad gathers everybody the next day and is like, "Who will host Tony and Marvin?" And Marvin pairs off with the young woman, and then one of these two guys that was just like rubbing me so wrong was like, "Hey Tony, I've got an extra bed," and so I felt grateful and totally guilty, and then I set out that day to figure out why don't I like this guy. When I go to bed in his room tonight, I'm gonna be honest with him, and I'm not gonna just say you seem like a creep. I'm not gonna just say you give me bad vibes. I'm gonna get specific because we separate these thoughts from like what we notice and try on. We're not just psychic. We are actually picking up on something like the Malcolm Gladwell book Blink. We aren't aware of what we're picking up on, but there's something specific we're picking up on: a tone of voice, a posture, a facial expression, something. And so I pay attention all day, and I start kind of figuring it out. And that night we go into his room, and I just tell him, "Look, I'm really grateful for you giving me this bed to sleep in, but I can't sleep here without telling you that I don't like you. You've given me bad feelings in my body when I've seen you from day one." And and he just like sat down, and we did a completion kind of conversation resentment thing. And I told him that I'm mad at him and like scared of him for his facial expressions, and that he says one thing but his face says another, and his face doesn't work right, and he just starts bawling. And I'm just saying all these things, and he's just bawling. And he ends up telling me that 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 when he was young, he was a competitive cyclist as like a middle schooler in Australia, and that he got in some horrible wreck, destroyed his face, and had it all reconstructed, plastic surgery, over like 13 different surgeries over the course of like 10 years. And every time it's like, no, it's still not right. I still don't have a normal face. I have to do another set of surgeries and another set of surgeries. And then finally, like a few years before this retreat that we were all at, he like felt like he'd finally got his face back to where it looks right, but underneath it's all scar tissue, and it just doesn't work right. And 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 that's what I was paying a lot of attention to his facial expressions, I felt horrible, and we both cried, and we embraced, and were able to really connect over the next couple days. And he then flew out to Denver to visit me from Australia. He had me review his book, the first book, before he published. And it's just such an intense lesson for me to not. I don't want to contradict the lesson that you're teaching your daughter, because we do want her to trust those sensations, but
Yeah.
we want her to trust them and to get more specific, and like understand what it is, and maybe even like share those things. And then later on with more work in radical honesty, I started thinking like actually and like no matter what was the cause of his facial expressions not matching his words, the guy deserves compassion. I mean, maybe I don't want to hang out with him. Maybe he grew up in a household where you just couldn't express yourself. And so he learned to lie with his facial expressions or something, and he never got practice. No matter what it is, the guy deserves compassion and understanding. So, yeah,
Unless he's trying to hurt little girls.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I love that story, Tony. That's beautiful. And I mean, yeah, right. Even if it wasn't a physical, like scar tissue or whatever it was, is probably just, most of our dysfunction usually comes from pain, right? It comes from some hurt part of us that isn't healed. Like, yeah, I understand that, and that most people are not
yeah.
pedophiles or kidnappers, and that risk is so low, really, as you were saying. And I'm curious, like, did you have an intuition of not being safe, or was it more like, I don't trust this guy, or like he annoys me, I'm irritated?
Well, I think at first it was just like, yeah, he seems like a creep. I just get a bad vibe, and you resist that. So, like, I actually, I picked up on it without knowing what I was picking up on, and then, like, would avert my gaze. Like, I just didn't want to feel the way I felt when I saw him, and subconsciously just avoided the guy.
Wow.
Um, but then that day, I said, okay, no, I'm going to step into this discomfort. I'm going to keep looking at him. I'm going to get curious about this aversion that I have to him. And then it did, yeah, kind of shift into like, I can't trust you. You're tricking me. You're fooling me, which is probably bringing up some wounds of my own that I wasn't and still am not totally aware of. Why that bothered me so much more than it bothered other people. Other people like this guy plenty.
Yeah, because I know who you're talking about exactly, and I didn't have that reaction at all. And I maybe wasn't paying that much attention to his facial expressions either.
Yeah. And I do think because I'd been paying so much attention to facial action coding system, and at times I've had people in my life that have like thought like Tony, you're on the spectrum, or you don't pick up on some normal social cues. So I think it wasn't just because I was doing animation; it's because like I worry that that's like a deficiency of mine, and so I was working extra hard at
Oh,
at
really?
practicing it for a year or two. Yeah. And that was now 7 years ago, so I've been kind of practicing it now for 10 plus years. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of reasons why I was really focused on that, but yeah, that would explain too why I was so creeped out by him, and most people weren't.
Yeah.
But you're also kind of a trusting soul. The other one I was also creeped out by. You're like, oh, I'll let him stay in my room.
Did I really? Oh, well, I was already in a room with the guy that creeped me out the most.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The guy from Israel.
Oh, okay. I I moved out of his room.
Oh, good, good. But at some point, I feel like you were okay with it.
Yeah, because we had this a similar kind of process where we spoke honestly with each other and got to a very different place afterwards where I saw, you know, a little more of what was going on there.
And we won't say his name, but I mean, I was scared of this other person too. And what ended up happening with him is that he was raised in Israel by a very religious family, kind of isolated from everyone, had a lot of like sexual thoughts and feelings that he was taught from a very young age were just horribly sinful and needed to be like suppressed and were from the devil. And I mean, he was and could now, I'm sure, admit, but at the time could have never admitted, a closeted homosexual, and totally asexual. And when you learn to repress yourself and are taught to repress yourself and even hate yourself and think of these parts of yourself as evil, you end up with some weird expressions, some weird ways of everything comes out convoluted because you've never been welcome to just say, like what Janet Lansbury says, every thought, every expression of your body is important to me, it's valid and lovable. That's the message I want my son to have, I want all kids to have, and that's not a message this man ever had growing up. And so yeah, I mean, I don't want to hang out with that guy, but he deserves some compassion.
Yeah. So, hey, we just have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything more we want to say about the film?
I do just really recommend it. And this production company A24 just keeps coming out with great stuff. They have one out in the theaters now that I want to see. One thing that's kind of cool from the filmmaking perspective is that last scene you're talking about. So the whole film's filmed on 35 millimeter. It's beautiful. It looks great. That last scene they filmed on an iPhone in like Magic Mountain or whatever it is because you aren't allowed to film in there.
Cool.
So it's got a cool little guerrilla filmmaking thing going on to it, which endears it to me even more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think what I appreciate the most is like just the gray area. There's not a black and white, like, is she a good mom or a bad mom?
Totally.
Does she deserve to have her child taken away? Or it's like, I get it why her child was taken away. And I was also like, why are they taking her kid? They can't do that. And there's just this whole it's emotionally complex in a way that's not clear cut. Um, yeah, I find that really lovely.
Good. All right, well, let's put Free Range Kids on our list and we can follow up this conversation, maybe bring the Florida Project back into it
Yeah.
after we read that book. We've got a long list. I mean, there's just never-ending list of great parenting books and great resources. So we'll be back next week with It's Okay Not to Share and 29 Renegade Parenting Rules. The author's going to join us for that one, and we've got a lot more coming. So thanks for listening to the Radical Parenting Podcast. Anything left to say, Kara?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.